So is it ever ethical to lie in negotiation? This is a question I get asked pretty frequently. Now, those of you who know me know that I like to avoid using words like always and never. But in this case, I'm pretty inclined to say that it is never ethical to lie in negotiation. But even there, I want to clarify a little bit more on what I mean by lying. In this video, I'm going to share with you the reasons why lying can be unethical and certainly a bad idea in negotiation, and also share with you some nuances that might clarify different ideas of what we actually mean by lying. So first, the number one reason why you don't want to lie in a negotiation is that it could get you into trouble. That is to say, quite apart from the ethics, it may be the case that if you're lying, you might be liable for fraud. It is also the case that there is a chance that at some point it will be found out later in a way that would give you a bad reputation as a negotiator. Of course, there's kind of the moral compass piece of it, but I want to put that aside for the purposes of this video because really the question here is just what are the ethics of lying? So with respect to this question of ethics and lying, let me make a few distinctions because the first important distinction is that in negotiation, there is a difference between lying and full disclosure of all information. So it is not required that you share all of the private information you have in a negotiation. And withholding that is not lying. But that is different from an affirmative statement that is untrue. And an affirmative statement that is untrue is in fact unethical and a lie. So let me give you an example. So if I'm willing to accept a job offer with the pay of $125,000 a year, and now I'm in the negotiation and I'm asked what's the lowest I'm willing to go, I don't have to say $125,000. So not answering is not a lie, and it's completely ethical. On the other hand, if when asked what's the lowest I'm willing to go, I say something like, I won't accept this job for a penny less than $150, that is actually an affirmative lie if in fact I will accept the job at $120. And so disclosure and lying are quite different things in negotiation. And one of the things that I have learned as a negotiation teacher, right, is that students often get very anxious about what are their obligations to disclose, or if they don't disclose, are they lying? And the answer is no, they're not lying. But an affirmative untruth is, in fact, an unethical lie. So the second thing I want to say, and it's related to this, right, is that while it's not ethical to lie, there's no obligation or even expectation to respond to every question you're asked. And in fact, in negotiation, we would say you probably shouldn't respond to every question you're asked. So for example, right, if someone says something like, can you go any lower? And you know you can go lower, people often feel stuck there, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I know I can go lower. So if I say no, then I'm lying. But if I say yes, then I've just made a big concession. Truth of the matter is, right, there are all sorts of ways to respond to that question and not lie and not show your hand. So for example, you might say something like, one way we can proceed is each of us can ask questions on how low can you go, and I could say how high you can go. And my worry is that if we took that approach, we would really miss all sorts of value-creating opportunities here. Or my worry is if we did this, it would become a negotiation that feels like a game of chicken where each of us is looking to see who will blink first. Moves like that, right, are very productive because you are not answering, you're not lying, and in fact what you're really doing is bringing the parties back to something that would be more of a mutual gains approach to negotiation. Recently I found myself in a mediation that, to my great regret, right, the parties were really locked into a haggle. And one of the parties kept on saying to me, well, give them this number and ask them, were they willing to accept this number? And I'm like, okay, but is this an offer you're making? No, I just want to know if they're willing to say yes to it and wrap it up. Right? And I felt like this is not a productive way to go because I'm really forcing the other side into this awkward situation where they're either going to not answer the question, or they're going to lie, or they're going to say yes, feel unhappy, and the negotiation or the mediation is going to be over. So I want to again say there's all sorts of ways to answer these kind of poignant, pressing questions in a way that doesn't reveal anything but isn't dishonest. So a third question that I want to kind of talk about here is this whole category of white lies. And so what is a white lie, right? A white lie is kind of a lie that you make so that you're not hurting someone's feelings in some way. Now, I'm not sure how often white lying actually comes up in negotiations, but I want to at least address it briefly here. And I want to try to avoid getting moralistic about it. I guess I've been in negotiations where white lies have come up. We have, let's say, had a dinner as part of the proceedings, and someone said, like, isn't the food delicious? And I'm thinking to myself, it was barely edible, right? It's like, well, should I say, oh, it was wonderful, right? Or should I say something else? I don't want to get moralistic about this. Like, I think each of us have our own style. My own style, which tends toward transparency, is not to say something like, this food was gross, but I might say something like, I'm so glad you liked the food. To be honest, it wasn't so much to my liking, but it was really nice having dinner with you, right? So part of the reason why I actually do this, that is to say, avoid the white lie and actually say something that is true, is I actually think it improves my own credibility as a negotiator. I want people to know that if I'm saying, I think this is good, or I like this, that I really mean it. And when I don't feel that way, I'll find a polite way of letting them know. Now, I do want to share one domain where I think lying may be an ethical or appropriate thing to do. And that is in a situation where you're in a negotiation and you somehow hear of the possibility of physical or bodily harm, either to oneself or to others, in such a way that the only way to prevent that might be to lie. So let me give you a story involving one of my colleagues. And this is from many years ago. One of this colleague's students was going through just a really tough time with struggling with mental health issues. And University Health Services wanted this student to actually visit. They felt it was important for his own safety. The student apparently calls this professor, to the professor's surprise, and the professor is doing a very, very good job active listening. And that's actually keeping the student on the line. But the professor now starts to get advice from other professionals saying you need to get this student to University Health Services. As the conversation is going on, it becomes clear that the only way to do that is for this colleague of mine to say that he would help the student in some very specific ways, but that first, the student had to go to University Health Services. Now, it was clear my colleague had no real intention and thought it was actually pretty much impossible that he could help the student in the way he was saying he could help the student. But he nonetheless said yes to these things in order to get the student to go to University Health Services. Now, I would make the case that in that situation, given how high the stakes were, that lying was appropriate because it was for the purpose of preventing physical or bodily harm. So, to recap, lying is something I would really never advise in a negotiation. First of all, it could be illegal. Secondly, it could hurt your reputation. It could get you into hot water. And it's just inconsistent with best practice. But when it comes to ethics, we want to distinguish lying about something from total disclosure of one's confidential information. In addition, I want to distinguish lying from answering every single question that you're asked. You never have to answer every single question that's asked. I also want to distinguish lying from the category of white lies, a lie that says something like, did you enjoy the meal today? Or what a lovely presentation that was. In situations like that, one could make the case that it's fine to say, I really enjoyed the presentation, even if you didn't. At the same time, I think there are skillful ways to handle that and not even tell the white lie. The one domain where I think lying may be ethical in a negotiation is if you're trying to somehow prevent physical or bodily harm, either to yourself or to other people. So to continue your journey on learning about negotiation, watch this next video, which is how to improve my negotiation skills. Also, if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel, like this video, and ring the bell so you never miss new content. Okay, super ethical to keep watching. Keep watching.